Hi all, my name is Davis.
And I'm Dennis.
And welcome back to my tech channel where we take a look at some very exciting tech toys, don't we?
Yes, this is the Tank.
Yes, today we are...
And this is the Tank. And what's that?
It's the Tank3. Yes, today we are talking about the Tank3 phone, and I have been using it over the past couple of weeks, and I am so excited to talk about it because the Tank line of phones, initially by Unihertz, now by a new brand 8849, is one of the most bizarre, one of the strangest, yet one of the most
wonderful,
wonderful line of phones in the world. Now, Dennis, you haven't really used a Tank phone before, so what's your initial impression?
Each one of these, they do feel a little bit weighty. Just a tiny, teensy bit, which doesn't make sense to me because they're all about a pound in weight.
Yeah, the first one was just over a pound.
And a pound isn't very heavy, right?
But for a phone,
yes,
it's
but like
heavy.
A pound of flour, that's a little bag. That's not very heavy.
I thought you were going to say a pound of flesh.
I'm not carnivorous right now. I'm not feeling too carnivorous, but these are a little bit weighty, but they do fit in your pocket, which I'm absolutely astonished, which really shows the capabilities of our pockets are underrated.
Most definitely. So I tested the first Tank phone, I think a little over a year ago today. Which one's the first one? It's this one that you've got in your hand. It's got a 22,000 milliamp battery, and I was utterly amazed. I was pretty astonished.
I don't know how to turn off the torch.
So hold down on the red button. On the original Tank, it was different. So when this initial Tank came out, I was gobsmacked that they basically decided to take the idea of an Energizer phone, massive battery, and actually put it into production. And since then, we've had the Tank 2, and now we are up to the Tank 3. And my impressions of them so far
How many tanks do we need?
Never enough. We need more tanks for Ukraine.
Yes, please.
So my basic impression of the Tank line is that they're insane phones with some amazing features. However, they're not very well-rounded phones because they've been quite glitchy. They've been a little bit slow.
Quite angular.
They've been a little bit slow. They've
sharp edges.
They've been a little bit slow. They've had very mediocre cameras in the past. But the new phone, the Tank 3, promises to change all of that. So we shall talk about that today in today's review. If you enjoy tech content like this, we talk about phones, we talk about laptops, we talk about pool cleaners, everything, then be sure to give this video a like and also subscribe if you haven't done so yet. You can also check Dennis's link out in the description. What do you do, Dennis?
I do clever things.
Like?
Debunk your myths.
Okay, actually maybe don't follow him at all.
Okay, what are we starting with?
So I want to talk about the older phones first. Okay, so the original Tank phone came out, I think it was last year, something like that.
Only last year.
It was very recent. They are coming out with these phones so quickly.
It's funny how quickly phones have come in just a year. Amazing.
I think you find it funny to note that the new one is the fattest of them all. So as we said, the original Tank phone had a 22,000 milliamp battery, which meant that you could basically use the phone for 5 days straight without needing to charge it.
Yes, but that
was pretty amazing.
My problem was, if you had such a big battery, why would you put such a slow processor in it?
Precisely. It's got a MediaTek Helio G99 processor.
What does that mean?
So basically it means it's a budget end processor. It's only got 4G.
But this is not a budget phone.
It's not a budget phone at all. It's what's kind of a budget phone. It's around 450 US when it came out, which means that's sort of like mid-range phone. But the thing is, it had some insane specifications. Apart from the battery, you've got a pretty nice 1080p LCD display. You've got a high-resolution camera that wasn't very good at all. You've got a night vision camera, and of course, you've got that amazing camp light in the back, which is 1200 lumens in brightness. So I feel like it's a weird mix of very high-in-line, innovative features and also very cheap.
It feels well made.
And also very cheap parts.
Which is made of?
It's made of a mix of aluminium and plastic. So it's very nice.
I thought you were going to say something really exotic, not
and
plastic.
polycarbonates. So basically, I thought it had potential, but I wish that they would just take it to the next level. And then when the Tank 2 came out, I think you had a little bit of a play of the Tank 2.
Yes, I was amazed that there were 2 lights in the back now.
I mean, the 2 camp lights were absolutely insane.
But why do I need a tungsten one? I just want them to be the same color. If they were, you'd be able to use it as a video light.
I'm guessing it's sort of like a video light where, you know, you might want tungsten, you might want daylight.
I want both.
I guess.
I just want 2 daylight. How hard is it?
With the Tank 2 phone, what they did was they slimmed it up a little bit.
It does feel significantly thinner.
They reduced the size of the battery, so it was just 15,500
so
milliamps.
small.
But it still meant that it could easily last 3 or 4 days with very heavy usage.
It lost days of battery life. Imagine if your iPhone lost 2 days of battery life.
It would be in the minus. And it also got some other cool features, like the projector. I mean, how cool was
It's a
the
bit
projector?
of a gimmick.
It was a gimmick, but a very cool gimmick.
Would you ever use it?
I actually did use it.
Outside of a demo? Outside of showing off?
Probably not, but I actually was like, sometimes, you know, when I was brushing my teeth, I would just project it at the wall and I could watch a YouTube video.
Why wouldn't you just watch it off the gigantic 6-inch screen?
Well, it's options, Dennis.
Sure.
My problem with the Tank 2 as well was that it was so slow. It had the same Helio G99 processor, 60Hz display, and it was a little bit glitchy as well.
Was it 60Hz as well?
60Hz. It had technically a 120Hz display, but because of the projector, they couldn't get the drivers to work somehow. Because this projector was 60Hz, the screen could only be 60Hz. And that basically killed the device for me. It was lovely, but it just felt so laggy and I just couldn't deal with it.
Will it bend? No.
And so now we come to the Tank 3.
Firstly, how much was this? Did the price go up?
Roughly the same. So it's difficult to say what the RRP price was because there were so many different, you know, preview pricings and sales and stuff, but it's around 400 to 500 US.
And what about the new one?
The new one is around the same.
Oh.
So 550 at the high end with sales and coupons and stuff.
But it's only got one light.
Yeah, so
It's got no projector.
Instantly, we're going to talk about that. They got rid of the projector, which I'm very disappointed about.
Kept the flap.
They kept the flap. But luckily, they did fix a lot of the problems that I mentioned in my Tank 2 review. Okay, so instantly, just tell me, what do you think of the design compared to the first two?
It's basically identical, but it's even fatter than the others.
I think
it's a lardy beast.
I think the Tank 2 was a pretty good size. You could just about fit it in your pocket. For me, the Tank 3 was just a little bit too large.
Yeah, you're probably right, but big battery.
The Tank 2, to put into perspective, was around 550 grams in weight. The Tank 3 is 666, which is a very ominous number, is it not? And it's 31 millimeters thick as well. So remember when I used to say my Palm Trios were very fat? This is thicker than a Palm Trio.
Oh my god.
But luckily it does have, to make up for that, a 23,000 milliamp battery. So even bigger than the original. This means that it's got the largest battery of any phone currently on production.
Is it legal on an aeroplane?
I think it's just under the legal limit. But what really excites me about this new phone are the specifications. Because finally it's got 5G, so decent data speeds, and that's because it's got the MediaTek Dimensity 8200.
And what does that mean?
It's a pretty good chip. I did some benchmarks that we'll get to later, and it's roughly the same speed as last year's Pixel phones. So
It's not bad.
Geekbench,
and it does feel fast.
Geekbench single core of roughly 1300, multi-core roughly 4000. So it's pretty much flagship specs. It's not like the best of the best, but it's among the best. 16 gigabytes of RAM, which is fantastic. 512 gigabytes of storage, expandable to 2 terabytes.
Nice.
So like massive specs everywhere. And finally, it's got a 120Hz display, and it feels so good. Finally, a Tank phone feels decently quick.
The screen's not very good.
Okay, yeah, we're going to get to the screen.
But it's fast.
Yeah.
Smooth.
It is just so buttery smooth to use. I honestly, That basically, you know, has fixed my biggest problem with the Tank phones, speed. Let's just talk about the hardware a little bit more. So on the top of it, as you can see, we've got a brand new thing. We've got a laser pointer. I don't think they call it a laser pointer because currently you can only use it as a rangefinder to find the distance between things.
Yes, but what is it?
It's cool. It's just a laser.
What does it do?
You can find the distance. So if you're like a builder and need to work out the distance of that wall to that wall,
What's
you can
the
work
limit?
it out. 40 meters.
That's not bad.
It's pretty good. I've tested it throughout multiple scenarios. It's pretty good. On the top as well, we have a
infrared
emitter thingy, so you can use it as a TV remote. We found that quite useful recently when you lost the remote to your projector.
Sure. The thing is, I don't know how many people would actually use it in real life.
Yeah, I think the questions that we do want to ask, I didn't get to actually, is these phones are very fun phones. They've got interesting features, but who exactly are they aimed at? They sort of suggest that it's aimed at campers and hikers and people like that.
It's way too heavy.
Wouldn't
the
they-
last thing you want
yeah.
to bring on a hiking trip is a gigantic phone
But the
like
thing
this.
is, wouldn't they bring an external battery anyway? So
Yeah.
why not put the 2 and 2 together?
Yes, but this will have to go in your pocket.
I'm sure you will have a holster or something.
It's absolutely massive. And when you use it, it really weighs you down. You can't disconnect it from the battery.
Well, so what's the biggest feature on the new iPhones this year?
It is titanium.
Wrong. Action button you were supposed to say. Count how many action buttons there are.
1, 2, 3, 4.
There's 2 action buttons.
No.
By default, the red button is supposed to be for turning on the torch, which I think is quite good. But my problem with it is that by default, at least, without rooting it or whatever, you have very limited options as to what you can use these buttons for. On the iPhone, you can basically set it to anything. On my iPhone, the action button is set to the accelerometer
Fascinating.
lock, and with this, I couldn't do that. So for once, Apple actually has a little bit more flexibility than Android, which I find a little bit hilarious. But yeah, we've got that, and it's just randomly restarted. So this has happened.
It's a pre-production.
This is a pre-production unit, but I am finding a lot of glitches that we'll get to later that I've been seeing on this phone. I've already done one software update, one firmware update, so let's hope that there is another one to come. On the bottom, we've got a flap that has the USB-C port and the headphone jack underneath. How annoying is that, Dennis?
Yes, but it makes it more protected.
I get that, but you know, without wireless charging as well, and yes, I don't want to imagine how terrible wireless charging would be to use on something this large, but
My question is,
Having to
are
open
these
the flap.
waterproof without the flap? Because
they should be, because most are these days.
I know, but they might think just because it's got a flap, it means they don't have to waterproof it properly.
Maybe.
So your phone, the life of your phone is dependent on this little flimsy
And I'm
flap.
just thinking, if you use it over a long period of time,
Yeah.
the flap will probably break, just like it did on the original Palm Pre. And then on the other side over here, we've got a fingerprint reader. The fingerprint reader works pretty well. It's combined
Yeah,
with the
it's good.
power button. And we've also got a SIM card slot that you do not need a SIM eject tool for. You can just pick it out with your finger and it comes out.
The question is
I
it
love
better
that.
than an eSIM?
I hate eSIM, so 100% yes. And then on the back, obviously, we've got a massive camera array. We'll get to the cameras later. And we've got just the one torch. Do you think just the one torch is enough?
Yeah. I mean, I've got no use for the 2 torches
I just
of
feel like-
different color temperatures.
I just feel like it's a bit of a downgrade.
It is. And on this one, you've got the brightest police lights.
Yes. I think the police lights are a very fun but
Useless.
very useless feature. Again, we'll get to that later. And also just getting back to charging, because it's 23,000 milliamps, they've afforded us a 120 watt charger. So now that we've talked about the basic hardware, I just want to talk about the screen, because I think out of these 3, the original Tank has the best display. I feel like we're going backwards.
That's quite controversial.
Because they're all got identical specifications basically. They're 1080p by 2460. They've got different punch holes for the 50 megapixel front facing cameras. On the first Tank, it's in the corner. For the Tank 2 and 3, they're in the middle. I think the 2 and 3 have identical displays. But the color temp of the 2 and 3, they're so off. The whites look so blue and these two look identical. So it's probably not because it's a pre-production unit.
Is it color calibration?
It might be intrinsic to the display, but it's probably a color calibration issue. And the original Tank, you know, it looks really good, the color calibration. It looks nice and warm and normal. So that's just something I wanted to bring up. And I also must say the lack of an always on display, because these are LCDs, is a little bit disappointing as well. And they do get reasonably bright, although not terrifically so. So if you do use these outdoors, you know, an iPhone for instance is far brighter. But only the Tank 3 has the 120 Hertz refresh rate.
That's a hard ask. Do you want colors or a smooth screen?
I would definitely go with the smoother screen, but yeah, it's a little bit disappointing that they haven't fixed the color issue from the Tank 2. So one of the advantages that you get from having such a large battery is that you might think that you're able to reverse charge other phones, like an iPhone. Well, no matter how I try to plug my iPhone into this, the iPhone will always charge the Tank phone, not the other way around.
You haven't tried the unplugging,
I've done that.
trick?
I did it for ages and I just couldn't get this. My iPhone was almost dead, but it was just convinced that it wanted to charge this phone with the world's biggest battery.
Oh gosh.
But I'm sure it works, but not with an iPhone.
Alrighty.
But because the battery is so big, they also claim you can use the camp light for 28 hours straight.
That's quite a long amount of time.
So far what I found is that you can use it for roughly 5 or 6 days without needing to recharge it.
That's extraordinary.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So now that we've talked about the specifications to no end, I just want to talk about how it is like to use, because that was probably the biggest problem with the first two phones. While, you know, you could get used to the size, I did struggle with the weight. They just felt a little bit laggy to use. The scrolling, once you're used to a fast scrolling display, going back to 60 Hertz is such a pain. And I think my main takeaway with this new phone is that it just feels so much smoother. I mean, Dennis, do you remember when you went from 60 to 120 Hertz?
Yeah, big difference. Same here?
Yeah, pretty much. It's once you've seen how smoothly this scrolls, you can't get back to the old one. So while we're talking about the speed, I'd just like to bring up the geek. So we can see on the original two Tank phones, we've got single core of around 720.
That's not great, if I'm honest.
It's very, very slow. That's probably why these phones felt a little bit laggy. And when you are carrying something so big and ridiculous, you want it to feel powerful. Like this is sort of like the muscle car of the phone world.
Yes, but this
or
is
maybe
an
the car to like
EcoBoost.
Escalade. But yeah, you decided to get the little diesel engine, the little diesel 4-cylinder. And then finally, with the new one, we've upgraded to a proper V8. You know, almost 1300 single core, close to 4000 multi-core, and finally it feels like you're using
Which
a flagship
iPhone
device.
is this equivalent to?
11-ish?
Not
I think
bad.
maybe 12.
Not
I
bad
have to review.
at all.
I have to review my iPhone Geekbench scores, but you know this is similar to a previous generation Pixel, so very good.
Very nice.
What this doesn't mean though is I'd say decent gaming performance, because this is a MediaTek processor. A lot of Western games don't support them to the best.
So it's like an Exynos.
Yeah, it's a bit like
can't,
an Exynos. A lot of Western developers don't really develop for MediaTek processors. So when I opened the game Grid Autosport, which is probably one of the best races on mobile, it does run it, even with the dialog box saying that you can't run it. It doesn't, you know, feel particularly smooth, even with the decent specs. And with this design as well, obviously you can't fit a backbone controller or a Razer key sheet.
What, you can't?
So you like, So it's difficult to fit one of those snap-on gaming controllers if that's something that you want to do. So one of the biggest problems with the previous phones as well is the software. I just constantly found glitches.
That's what happens when you install a Windows theme.
Yes, I did download a Windows launcher, the Tank 2, and it's honestly my favorite launcher on the
But is this the reason why you're getting glitches?
I've got the same launcher on the Tank 3 and we can see it's just so much smoother. It looks amazing. The problem with Unihertz phones is that they don't have the best software support. For example, the original Tank is still on Android 12 and I don't think it'll be getting Android 13.
What number are we up to now?
We're close to 14 now. The Tank 2 did get an update, but these two are currently on Android 13 and we haven't heard anything from Unihertz, but these probably won't be getting a lot of years of software support. It's just the thing. And glitches, while they do get solved over time, it's just not perfect still. I think one of the main glitches, most glaring ones, is with the camera app. So while it seems to work okay normally, when you switch between the 3 different lenses, it doesn't expose properly. So sometimes when you're taking a 3x picture and then you switch into 1x, the exposure just looks completely off. Although it seems to be working tonight.
Is it the same on the others?
On the other phones, it seems to be okay, but especially when just switching lenses, you do get a few problems.
Slow.
The camera app is a lot faster, luckily, on the new phone, but it's still kind of slow. And as you might expect, using it single-handed is an absolute nightmare.
Have you tried?
Yeah. So with the new phone, they got rid of the little multitasking gesture bar on the bottom.
Really? What
Yeah,
did
they did.
replace
So
it with?
with nothing.
Oh.
And on the old phones, you could probably see a little bit of a multitasking bar. But what that means is that the keyboard has moved down, so it's right on the bottom of the display, and the weight distribution is just absolutely terrible. So it's very difficult to type.
And they did get rid of
You
it.
can see the difference between the two. And I think using it as well, the new phone is just a little bit too big. The Tank 2, I could just about fit in my pocket comfortably, but instead of putting my phone in my pocket now, I just put it in my bag. It's just, I feel like it's stretching the trouser material too much.
For sure.
And it'll probably break at some point. And in fact, it's so big that I actually dropped it the other day.
No, you didn't.
Yeah.
You dropped a review device.
Because I didn't want to put it in my pocket, I put it on the armrest of the chair I was sitting on.
No,
And
you didn't.
I didn't realize it just dropped around maybe 1 or 2 feet on the ground, and it fell on a carpeted surface, but I had a little bit of a plastic ridge, and now I've got 2 little dents.
I'm appalled.
It's just like, it's little usability things like that. It's gotten so big that you're just sort of encouraged to put it in dodgy places. So if you are thinking of getting a case, I'm not going to encourage you to get
cases available.
They did make a case for the 1 and 2, so I'm guessing they'll do a case for the 3.
Oh my god. How much thickness does it add?
I don't want to imagine. Okay, so now I just want to talk about the cameras. So the specifications are, the front camera is 50 megapixels.
Tiny sensor.
Probably a tiny sensor. The rear cameras, the main sensor is 200 megapixels. We've got 50 megapixel wide angle lens, and a 12 megapixel 3.4 times telephoto. And I think every one of those cameras, apart from the main sensor, is very mediocre.
Can't they fit one good sensor in it?
I
Like
think-
a nice 1 inch.
I think, yeah, I do wish that they would just fit one good sensor.
They can probably fit an APS-C in here.
They could fit anything, they could probably go full frame. But the 200 megapixel main camera is okay. I did a camera test and the detail that you get is similar to the 50 megapixel sensor on the iPhone 15 Pro Max, so that's good. But there is severe over sharpening. It just looks like that you turn the sharpening up to 100 in Lightroom, and it honestly looks a little bit disgusting. There's so much sharpening. And in addition to that, the color temperature just seems to be very off.
Is it just the screen though?
It might just be the screen, but I actually found myself using the manual mode to change the color temperature, so I get a nice picture. And also the pictures look very, very unsaturated. I mean, just in the processing, guys, turn the saturation up a little bit.
Probably harder than that.
And it will look a lot better. I think the hardware of the 200 megapixel camera, because you can get some nice shallow depth of field with it, it is quite good, the hardware. It's just the software that really lets it down. Luckily though, for the first time ever on the Tank phone, we do have 4K video recording. And
not bad.
It's
Is it good?
Okay. The
Stabilization?
Stabilization's only software, I think. It's not very good, the stabilization, but the actual quality of the footage looks pretty good.
Jelly wobble?
There's actually no real jelly wobbler.
Hello, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
So effectively, the cameras are better than they used to be, but they still are not very good, unfortunately. And I think they should just work on the software for the cameras, but I do understand that's very difficult for a small manufacturer like Unihertz/8849. Now I guess we should talk about the, it's got an extra camera, doesn't it?
Oh my god, does it? Yes,
It's
got the
a
infrared.
It's got a 64 megapixel infrared
I don't think
camera.
anyone's ever going to use it.
I think it's a very cool thing.
Gimmick.
Like, I think all of these phones have had an infrared camera. The first one was a 20 megapixel, I think, and I can't remember.
Oh, it's only got 2 infrared blasters.
Yeah, so the new phone has more infrared blasters, so you've got a bigger range. I did try it before.
Oh, the Tank2 also has 4.
So I think it's a very fun feature, and if you do want a feature like that, then yes, here's a phone that's got it. But to the average user,
what scenario would you use it? Bug watching in the dark.
I think the main usage is for wildlife photography. Or, for example, imagine you're in the safari, you're shooting a documentary.
Yes, but the infrared blasters don't go very far. I'm going to assume they don't.
We need to attract the wildlife
go further
close
than a
to the
meeting.
camera.
A massive lion. that doesn't sound safe.
Well, you know, the feature is there if you do want it. I think it's fun to play around with, but a bit like the projector, for the average user, probably it won't be used very often. Let's just talk about the other features as well. It's got the 40-meter rangefinder laser, and honestly, that's a feature that I really wanted when I was a focus puller on films, because quite often you'd have to like find the distance between the camera.
Is it accurate?
And it is very accurate. You have to find the distance between, let's say, the actor and the camera, and you can sort of guess that, you know, that's perhaps 10 feet or whatever. But with this, you can actually find out the distance, and then professionally people actually do use laser rangefinders like this to work out the distance. And back then, a Leica rangefinder was around $500, which is, you know, not far off this phone. So it would have been amazing to have back then. And then for builders as well, I'm sure it'll be very useful. On the other hand, the one speaker, how have they not changed the position? It's constantly just been on the back by the little hook thing.
Oh.
All of these phones have had quite they're loudspeakers, but because of the positioning, they sound really muffled when you're actually listening to it, because it's facing the other way.
Yeah, you should be able to fit stereo speakers,
Yeah,
like a boombox in here.
The bezels are quite big, so why don't we just have stereo speakers on the front?
Yeah, for sure. Just have them stick out.
Come on guys, we can do this. We will get better and better every few months when a new one's released. So we've talked about the camp light. It's cool to have. I've actually was using it the other night when I was just parking up the car. It was in a very dark location. I would have used my little flashlight, you know, normally, but you know, that's not very good. The camp light was amazing to have. The red-blue police lights though, I'm still not sure what that's for. According to the website though, they claim
It's for fun.
They claim, when some wild animal's close to you, you can make it use the animals run away in shock. Obviously a failed Google translation, but apparently it's to scare away animals if they get too close.
Does it work? Would you use it over bear spray?
I don't think there's a way to shortcut it as well. So you have to go into the Toolbox app to do it, and then it's just a whole process. I think it's a very fun feature, and now you can finally just have a solid blue or red and not have a flash, which is nice for, I don't know, creative looks. But again, it's just one of those features which sound really cool on the surface,
niche.
but is incredibly niche. So in conclusion, I think it's a lot better than the other Tank phones.
I think it's the first good Tank phone.
I agree. We've been nitpicking a lot, but that's just because I love this line of phones so much, because you don't really see phone manufacturers have fun anymore.
They're crazy.
It is
and we
absolutely
need more
insane.
craziness.
Precisely. And I think
dirty. When was the last time you cleaned it?
never. I think mainly due to the faster processor.
Definitely.
It's just, it's finally a phone I can recommend. If you want this phone, like, you know who you are. Either you're a builder or a focus puller for a film who really needs a laser rangefinder. Maybe you're a hiker who's sick of having to carry a external battery.
Fisher.
And needs, you know, a very big battery. Maybe you're someone who needs that infrared camera because you like to stalk people in the dark. Like, if one of the features appeals to you, then no other phone will probably do. And if you are picking between one of the 3 Tank phones, I would absolutely 100% recommend the new one.
But what if you want a projector?
Or what if you want a projector?
Yeah.
I guess you have to go with the Tank 2 and take the compromises.
Sounds good. I will do that.
So if you enjoyed this review of the 8849 Tank 3, make sure to give us a like, to subscribe, and also comment any queries that you might have in the comment section below. And on that note, toodaloo.